As a female-hosted historical podcast, we felt it was only appropriate to celebrate Women's History Month with a lesson in feminine strength and endurance. Without further ado, we are proud to present the tale of the Haenyeo, Jeju's legendary female freedivers. She can hear the waves as they gently lap at the wooden boat, the soft lullaby of the water calming her mind, helping her focus. Looking into the deep below, she lets the rhythmic ripples wash over her before raising her eyes to the sky, opening her lungs to the cool air and diving down into the deep. The icy water pushes against her face, trying to keep her afloat, but she persists. Her legs lash against the ocean's weight, forcing her body forward, forcing her down to the very bottom. And here, amongst the seaweed and creatures of the deep, arms outstretched, she searches. What she pursues is more precious than pearls. It's life itself. Weightless, she floats along the bottom, eyes keen, hands combing through the tall seagrass. She is patient. She doesn't panic. She waits until her gaze lands on a round, mossy rock. Its distinctive holes are hard to spot, but she would know them anywhere. Beautiful and rare, the abalone seems to glow as she scoops it up into her gloved palm. Gently, she clutches it to her chest as her sure feet hit the bottom and expertly launch her upward to the surface. She feels a squeeze in her chest. Her body badly needs air, her lungs crave it, but her mind knows better. She forces herself to rise slowly, weighing the pressure of the ocean against the pressure in her lungs. Finally, after what feels like ages, her head pops above the surface and she emits a telltale whistle. It escapes her lips without effort, a natural ending to a calculated dive. Resting her body, breathing deeply, she holds onto her float and places the precious abalone into her net, secure that she has put food on her family's table tonight. Around her, the waves resume their calming crashes against the side of the boat, their song only interrupted by the random whistles from her fellow divers, each a reassurance that her friends too have risen safely. As she regains her strength, her eyes begin their search once again. And all too soon, she swallows another giant gulp of air before returning to the deep. She may be fictional, but they, the female divers of Jeju, are all too real. Haenyeo, meaning sea women in Korean, were more than just divers. They were the life force of their island, maintaining its economy during the harrowing Japanese occupation, expanding the fishing industry across the Korean peninsula, and providing not just for their families, but for their nation.
Hey y'all, I'm Erica.
And I'm Caroline. And today, we're bringing you another episode of the Pithy Chronicle, History with a Bite.
Our historical retellings are guaranteed to entertain.
We are here to prove that history is just another reality show, except this melodrama is unscripted.
So let's open up the book and jump in. In the time it takes you to drive to work, we promise to fascinate, surprise, and enlighten you.
All you have to do is listen. Are you hungry yet? Today, there are less than 2,500 active divers, most of whom are over 60. But in their heyday, some 23,000 brave women dove unassisted into the chilly unknown, harvesting seaweed, octopus, conch, sea slugs, and the elusive abalone. Year-round, these women, daughters, wives, and mothers, lived at the border between life and death. The courage of the Jeju women was, and still is, extraordinary. Named a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage of Humanity in 2016, notably the first female activity to ever be registered.
Are you kidding me?
Nope, this was the first.
2016. I guess we had nothing to contribute.
Obviously. We're just wombs, Erica.
Until 2016.
I know.
Oh, God. I hate this thing.
It's a soapbox, not a theme. We're just getting it out there. Anyway, first female activity to ever be registered, the Haenyeo continue to bolster the Jeju Island economy today. Only now, it's through tourism. So, let's quickly orient ourselves. Jeju Island is directly south of the main Korean peninsula and the western approaches to the Korean Strait. It is 282 miles from Seoul, the capital of South Korea, and that's currently only about an hour and 15-minute flight. But even just a few decades ago, it was nearly an insurmountable distance.
Talk about isolation. How different it's gotta be from the mainland. Its own culture, definitely its own history, people.
It was not always a part of the Korean dynasty, and so yes, it absolutely is very different in many ways. Certainly, the diving situation was unique.
All right, so can you help me jump into the history?
I'm going to let you dive into the history.
Of course you are!
Here for you. Jeju Island's early history is chronicled by legend. 3 demigods of the Samseong mythology descended from the heights of Mount Hala as the ancestors of the Jeju people and founders of the Tamna kingdom. Things were trucking along nicely, but then came Taejo, founder of the new Goryeo dynasty in 918 CE. So when we're talking isolation, it is not until almost 1000 CE that they are really having a lot of contact with the outside world. So Taejo was interested in the island, but not necessarily for its scenic views. Taejo dispatched troops, and the small island kingdom of Tamna eventually had no choice and submitted to the Goryeo.
I always hate to see an underdog fall.
I know, me too. In 1105, the island was downgraded to the term Tamna-gun, meaning district, and Goryeo officials took over the island's affairs, eventually renaming it Jeju, or province across the sea. Clearly, the name stuck. But, good and bad, the Goryeo dynasty did not. It was replaced by the Chosun dynasty, which was established in 1392. However, this dynasty was no kinder to the island. It considered Jeju as foreign and used the island for political exiles and eventually prohibited the Jeju people from traveling to the mainland at all.
That's harsh! Ugh.
I know, it feels very Alcatraz-y.
Yeah.
But despite the harsh, inhospitable politics, Jeju and its people survived. They used the natural resources of the island to develop a fishing economy supported by volcanic reefs and an abundance of shellfish and other sea creatures. All right, now that we have the background, let's go into the deep end.
A swimming pool joke, Caroline, really?
You know you love it.
Me? I don't know.
She's smiling. I can see it. Male sea diving is documented as early as 434 CE and includes mention of women working alongside their husbands. But it's a 17th century monograph or scholarly publication on the geography of Jeju that first mentions Haenyeo, or diving women. And only 1 century later, female divers officially outnumbered their male counterpoints.
Why? Besides the obvious answer, we know women are awesome, we know they kick butt, but what is the accepted...
But why did the women do this better?
Scientific reason.
There are scientific reasons. Women became better divers for a number of different reasons. First was war. Like most kingdoms of its day, the Chosun dynasty, while refusing to acknowledge the Jeju men as equals, still used them as cannon fodder.
Of course.
Second, there's deep sea fishing. The ocean floor near the shore was teeming with life, but so were the deeper waters further out. During this time, deep sea fishing stole the lives of many Jeju men, and that left the women with very little choice. And third, and most interestingly, is biology. Women have more subcutaneous fat, and that sustains them in the cold waters of the Korean Strait. Additionally, we women have a higher shivering threshold.
Well, that's the first time a high subcutaneous fat content has ever helped me.
I'm in total agreement. I was like, oh, my hips have a reason besides childbirth. Or maybe it is just childbirth. I don't know. It made me feel much better about myself to be like, it's natural.
It's scientific.
It's science! All right, Erica, I have something for you to read, and I'd love for you to enlighten our listeners as to how awesome these women were. Can you please do me a favor?
Korean female divers, unlike their Japanese male counterparts, dive year-round to harvest the seas, not just in warm weather. In summer, the water temperature is around 24 degrees Celsius, and that's 75.2 degrees Fahrenheit for us American upstarts, but in winter, it drops down to 10 degrees Celsius, or 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold. And these strong women made up to 140 dives and stayed in the water for 200 minutes per day, 28 days per month. They pushed their bodies to the limit in order to provide for their family.
Actually, over time, their bodies physically adapted to these harsh, cold environs and long breath holds. So they not only pushed their body to the limits, they expanded the limits and broke that glass ceiling.
I was just about to say, way to break that glass ceiling, ladies.
They did it. They're very, very fascinating.
All right. We've talked about it, but let's listen to a study from Seoul National University and the Haenyeo Museum. They've put this in academic terms. Korean women divers remain a monumental legacy in terms of thermoregulatory and cardiovascular adaptation of environmental physiology. The Haenyeo developed a larger lung capacity, 12% greater than non-diving Korean women, and decreased heart rate while submerged underwater, which reduced their cardiac output and in turn extended their dive times. That's phenomenal.
Yes, it is. These women were able to adapt so efficiently and push their bodies beyond their initial physical limitations. And they could do that because they were literally fighting for their lives, for their families. Adrenaline is an amazing thing.
Yeah, I mean, the moms who lift their cars off of their children.
Exactly. It's that kind of, I have so much power because of the need to have it.
Well,
that makes sense.
Let's talk, of course, about what they're wearing, because I'm a fashion aficionado, I need to know. And today we see the pictures of modern Haenyeo dressed in wetsuits, wearing masks to protect their eyes, flippers on their feet to assist in the aquatic movements. That's obviously relatively recent, so I'm going to need you to tell me what the getup was. What was the outfit?
You're right. You're right. Scuba suits are a new option for them. Previous to that, the Haenyeo wore cotton bathing suits. Yes, you heard me correctly, 100% cotton bathing suits. They did have a color choice, black or white. Revolutionary. At least they knew black was slimming. And then they had a 0.5 millimeter thickness, which to me, I don't think it matters how thick cotton is. Cotton just absorbs water, so it sounds terrible. It traditionally consisted of a sojang-i, which was the bathing suit itself, a jeoksam, or an upper kind of shirt, and a mosugun, which was like a hood. And of course, here's the kicker. No goggles.
I'm sorry, no goggles? So their eyeballs?
No, nothing to protect.
The eyeballs were touching not only the icy water, but the salty water? That sounds miserable.
Yep.
I'm shivering.
For up to 200 minutes a day.
No, that makes me shiver. And I recognize that I have a higher shivering threshold because I'm a woman, but holy
But
cow.
no, I don't want to do it.
No.
It couldn't be me.
Couldn't be me.
Yes, beginning at age 12, these Jeju girls were plunged into the Haenyeo world, almost always taught by their mother or a close female relative. Coming of age at 16 and now relatively competent divers, the women would receive their own equipment and they would join the others, boating out to the deeper waters before diving into their future.
Oh, I love the poetic phrase.
Thank you. Divers were divided into 3 categories. The sangun, which were the most capable, and they dove over 16 meters or 52.5 feet deep. And then there was the jungun, who were highly experienced but only dove to about 13 meters. And then the newest Haenyeo were labeled hagun, and they stayed closer to the shore, diving the shallowest depths.
But I mean, obviously there's a peak and there's a recession as they age. Are their dive times shorter and shallower, or what's going on?
Absolutely. You're right. As you age, obviously your body can do less things. Although, honestly, some of the women today still diving are in their 80s. So less is a hard word to apply to them. But these women learn to swim before they can walk. And just because they aged, it didn't take them out of the game. They might have to move from a different level, but it didn't really matter because their knowledge of the sea, their information about the tides and what animals lurked where, that made them invaluable. So Haenyeo worked in groups, usually formed by familial or neighborly ties many generations past. And each morning, the Sangun, Jungun, and Hagun all gathered together in a shelter on the beach called a bultyuk. This is where they changed into their bathing suits and they discussed the day's conditions. This is where experience would really play a role. They would prepare the novice Hagun for the dive ahead. The groups also had very strict guidelines to lessen the risks because this was not without its dangers. All Haenyeo were given a voice, though of course elders' opinions were more respected than newbies, and all decisions had to be unanimous. So here in this watery world of women, they maintained an independence from male authority and had a bit of a democratic system, which I think is great. The dives themselves were harrowing. I can't stress enough.
It sounds like it.
I'm a swimmer. I was a lifeguard. I'm a no on this. I could not do this. Working in teams of 5 to 6 divers, the most experienced Haenyeo led, choosing the location and making decisions based on the water's depth, the weather, the season, etc. And the rules required that each team stay together because their lives depended on each other. Despite diving down individually, the team was held accountable for their fellow members, maintaining head counts, listening for that whistle of air with each ascent, ensuring no woman was left behind. But of course, accidents happened. Seaweed could easily tangle around their feet, claiming them captive. Sharks were frequent companions. Jellyfish floated in their path. Storms, exhaustion, injuries. All of these perils could force a diver down to their watery grave.
God, that's so delightful. Darling. To get us back on a different tone.
Yeah, they didn't all die, obviously. Most didn't. But it was very dangerous, so they had to keep track of each other.
Indeed. And so, in the spirit of this, you've mentioned a whistle a couple of times. A whistle of air. Can you talk more about it?
Absolutely. The Haenyeo are very well known for their distinctive breathing style. Their dives could last 2, maybe even 3 minutes at a time. And they needed that time to get all the way down to 52 feet and then look around for something and get it and then bring it back. So in order to control their airflow, they kept an even rhythm of air the entire time, which escaped their mouths in a steady stream. And as they surfaced after each dive, the final teensy bit of air would finish out of their mouth in a whistle. It is a style that is unique to these women, passed down from generation to generation. It's called sumbisori, and freedivers today try to imitate this because it is so efficient. But it also allowed for the women, as heads popped up, to keep track of each other so that no one got lost or forgotten.
Wow, that's intense.
It's intense. Every 2 to 3 minutes, you're doing this very aggressive dive.
Yeah, 200 minutes a day.
Yeah, 2 to 3 minutes, 140 times a day.
That's a lot.
And then you're making sure that all your friends survive, too.
That's just a lot. So, as our listeners may or may not know, we are both opera singers, or at least were at some point in our lives. So
prior to children. Yep.
Yeah, prior to children and C-sections and life and all of that. But one would think we would have a pretty good breath control.
I think I have pretty good breath control.
I have decent breath control, I think.
Okay. All right, let's see.
Yeah, I want to challenge you now.
Oh,
yeah. I gotta challenge you, and I'm gonna challenge our listeners to see how long you can hold your breath.
So we're gonna pop out and do our breathing thing and then pop back in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Nice.
I, worked up an actual sweat.
I was like, I have to pee and I have to breathe. I don't know which to do first.
Oh, yeah, I'm actually sweating.
So off air,
I'm so
off
gross.
air, Eric and I just did a little test, and neither of us made it to 2 minutes. No. Erica got slightly closer. So if you do this little experiment at home, please feel free to write up the results, put them on our Facebook or our Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave a review and be like, P.S. I beat you in your time.
Okay.
If you didn't do well, we would love to know, because that would make us feel better. But I think that anyone that practices this at home will see it is oh so difficult. And these women were looking at 3 times that long. So that
we have
hurts.
to know, like, do you have what it takes to be a Haenyeo? Because
we don't.
we don't.
So even with their excellent breathing skills that far surpass mine and Erica's,
we gotta practice.
The uncertainty of the sea required the Haenyeo to take other precautions as well. Before a dive, prayers were offered to Jamsugut, the goddess of the sea, asking for overflowing nets and calm waters. Shamanism was a common practice among the Jeju, and ritual leaders called Shinbang would offer food and wine, burn written prayers, and invoke the Dragon King, or the spirit of the sea. Love a good Dragon King.
I know. I was just thinking, gosh, a dragon
That
king.
sounds fabulous. The Haenyeo maintained a deep respect for the sea, and the shaman performed rituals whenever the catch was low, the sea rough, a boat was new, and most especially on a new Haenyeo's first dive.
Absolutely. I'd be praying.
Yeah, because not only do you want to survive, obviously, but you want to make a good impression. You want to show these women, hey, I've got what it takes to keep up with you.
Yes, but also, please God, don't let Jaws be out there today.
No Jaws.
No Jaws.
After 4 to 5 hours of diving, these divers would then return to their bultyuk to grill up some of the day's catch, which was often conch. It's considered the lifeblood of the Haenyeo. They shared each other's successes and losses. They sang traditional songs. Huddled around the fire, these women gave each other solidarity and strength to cope with their precarious lives and the inevitable hazards of their grueling occupation. Most dealt with one or more illnesses: headaches, hearing impairment, inflammation/disease of the middle ear, stomach disorders, skin irritation, musculoskeletal problems, and the list goes on. But even after all of that, they persevered, they endured. In fact, they thrived, these women of the sea. And perhaps most extraordinary of all, most especially to 2 women who have recently-ish given birth, these amazing forces of nature continued to work until full term.
Nope.
Nope. The entire 10 months of pregnancy. They didn't take any, oh, I'm feeling a little sick today. I think I won't do my ridiculously strenuous diving. No. These resilient symbols of strength often began labor in the water, sometimes even gave birth on the boat.
Wow. I mean, you're taking a water birth to a whole new level.
I love that. It's a whole new level of water birth. There is a traditional Haenyeo song called Ieyodasana. Its lyrics weave a tale of struggle and despair, of perseverance, of life as a diver. And it talks about this circle of life, these mermaids born to the water. Quote, "Where to go, where to row, all aboard the depths of the sea. Where my mother gave birth to me, did she know to dive would be my destiny?" Don't you just love the imagery of it? Women of the water being birthed and born by women of the water, in the water, or on the water. It's beautifully poetic. I digress.
And I agree. It is. It is beautiful. It is thoughtful. It is an incredible literary turn of phrase. But God, I just don't...
To go into labor in the water and then to give birth on the boat surrounded by the day's catch, it just goes to show how practical these women were. Okay, time to go. Let's get it out. They worked so hard just to survive.
Yikes.
That they didn't have the option of being like, this pregnancy's got me a little down. I think I'll take today off. That just was not in their vocabulary. I actually watched this fascinating documentary that featured a retired Haenyeo, and she literally poo-pooed the whole pregnant diving thing, saying it was, quote, not an issue. Her only complaint about it was that she had trouble leaning over her belly to put on her fins.
And I had to have my husband put on my shoes most days. That gives amazing insight into the rigors of their day-to-day existence. If being 9 months pregnant while diving 50 feet to catch her own food for hours every day isn't a big deal, much less laboring or even giving birth in the water, it was just like an expected part of life.
Yep. And then, perhaps even more ridiculous, do you know when the women returned to the water? Can you guess? How soon after they gave birth do you think they were back to diving?
Like 2 months?
Like a traditional maternity leave period? Really?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. No. They returned to the water just 1 week.
1 week.
After giving birth. A week! Leaving their newborns in the hands of friends and family, often their fathers. And amazingly, the Jeju Haenyeo are often considered to be the first working mothers in Korea.
Now, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm gonna get a little in your business here, but was it just like a giant sitz bath?
It couldn't have been
The
good.
salt water, man! You are not healed at that point.
I would not think so. No.
No.
So now we know why UNESCO honored these wonderful women.
But it took them till 2016.
Well, all right, fair enough. I can't speak for that. All right, so the Haenyeo appear in the history books during the 17th century, which was nearly 300 years after the Chosun dynasty came to power and officially adopted Chinese Confucianism as the national religion. Erica, I think in order to understand the world in which these women lived, we need a little snapshot of Confucianism. Would you help us out?
I would love to, because my only reference is Korean dramas, and I'm sure those are super accurate.
Super.
So, Confucianism, in a nutshell, is a philosophy that focuses on morality, personal virtue, and respect for community. Worship of ancestors and an ethical guide to a peaceful life included filial piety, or devotion to the family. The philosophy promoted a patriarchal social structure that inherently discriminated against women and deeply affected Korean etiquette, attitudes, and traditions. I can see how that would be a problem.
It would be a problem. It's not hard to see why they were the first working mothers, although I'm sure that the women of Korea who were living on subsistence level worked their asses off, whether or not the kids were at home.
Fair.
But despite these odds, the women of the water effectively turned these practices on their head. While Confucianism still dictated the political organization and the ancestral worship of Jeju, the Haenyeo accounted for 60% of their family's income, and nearly 40% of their husbands were actually unemployed house husbands.
I'd take a house husband.
Give me one.
Any day of the week.
Any day. Men paid a dowry to the family of the bride, which was the opposite of the Korean tradition, and families celebrated girl births over those of boys. After all, another breadwinner. In fact, on a tiny island that is off the coast of the island of Jeju, that's called Mara,
Goodness.
there was a complete reversal of traditional gender roles, and the men always stayed home and tended the house and the children, while the women brought home the bacon.
Or the shellfish, as the case may be.
Ooh, look at you getting into the spirit of the pun.
I mean,
I'm so proud.
you really are
A proud mama hen.
You're really rubbing off on me, what can I say?
Oh, good.
But get me back on track.
All right, let's get back on track. The end of the 19th century brought upheaval and revolt to the Korean peninsula. In 1905, Korea became a protectorate of Japan, and just 5 years later, in 1910, Korea was officially annexed into the Japanese Empire, which ended the Korean dynasty. Japanese colonization was a distressing and dangerous time. However, it did begin the process of opening Korean society as a whole to women particularly. New possibilities emerged: careers, education, shocking changes to the status quo of the former Chosun dynasty.
We want to take a moment to acknowledge the devastation the Japanese Empire brought to the Korean people and their way of life. It was a terrible time. They were treated miserably. And we're not in any way saying the occupation was good for Korea or even made life better for individuals. We are only saying that the Japanese occupation brought change, including a different outlook on women.
For the Haenyeo, the new reality brought even further advancements. While the Chosun dynasty took much of the Haenyeo harvest as tribute, the Japanese allowed them to sell their own catch. Revolutionary. They also encouraged contractual work. The Haenyeo skills were highly sought after. Many became migrant sea divers, Chulga Haenyeo, and they peddled their skills across the entire Korean peninsula and nearby foreign territories such as Russia. Uniquely, this foreign contact gave them a glimpse into other cultures far before the average Korean. It was like a little study abroad. The Chulga Haenyeo represent one of the first professional female careers in a contemporary sense. These women will never stop amazing us. And they didn't just impress us, they impressed their colonizers. The Mailshinbo, which was a Korean newspaper published during the Japanese occupation and was heavily pro-Japanese, a puppet for propaganda, published the following article on December 16, 1926. Erica.
Famous in Jeju are the Haenyeo, women divers who pick abalone and seaweeds in the sea. However strongly the waves ruffle or however severely the wind blows, they swim freely in the vast sea as if coming in and out of their own houses, without fear, like mermaids rather than human beings. They work almost every day of the year, and it is said that if they were pregnant, they would still dive into the sea. As a consequence, they have highly bulky and mahogany-skinned bodies, the real model of a career woman who know nothing of coldness when it's actually cold, and nothing of illness when they are actually ill. End quote.
That is very high praise from Japanese occupiers, and it is astounding that they would write so respectfully of people that in general they did not treat humanely. This same paper referenced unmarried Haenyeo earning their own marriage expenses through their labors, and they discuss a bride paying for her bridegroom's tuition while he was studying abroad in Tokyo. They write of mothers sending their children to universities, entire extended families supported by the work of one enterprising woman. Honestly, they write of greatness. But I doubt the Japanese and their puppets were quite as pleased when the Haenyeo started to use their economic influence to organize protests against Japanese occupation.
What?
I know. Between 1931 and 1932, the Water Women organized 238 protests.
Holy cow, it's a lot.
It's a lot. It's every other day doing a protest. Coming to a head on January 24th, 1932. Over 500 armed Haenyeo, and armed is in quotes because they were wielding weeding hoes and broomstick spears, attempted to rescue over 100 previously arrested divers, attacking the police station where they were being held.
So first of all, don't throw shade on my broomstick spear.
Have you used a broomstick spear in the past?
Of course not.
I think a frying pan would have been better. Grab your wok and go.
Oh no, I have definitely wielded a frying pan on more than one occasion. Mostly me being really paranoid, but that's neither here nor there. What I really need to know is how we got praise from the occupiers in 1926 to revolts and imprisonment in 1932. Seems like a big jump. Of course, the almighty dollar.
The almighty dollar. It's always about money. The Japanese originally supported the independent sale of Haenyeo harvests, as I said, but soon the purse strings tightened. In 1912, Japan decreed that Haenyeo must pay fees to fish in their own traditional locations, which had been passed down over many generations. This fee comprised 25% of their annual income.
Wow.
Then they colluded with the merchants, intercepting profits and eventually granting exclusive rights to specific merchants. Read merchants who gave them bribes. So this devastated the price of seafood, and in many cases, it cut it in half. So my math skills are a bit rusty, but if you begin with only 3/4 of your income and then that's cut in half, you're left with 3/8. And that makes it pretty hard to support entire families, send children to universities, or donate entire airplanes and even a ship to the nation of Korea as a contribution to its defense after the outbreak of World War II. Which they did.
I'm sorry.
Which they did, by the way, despite their financial setbacks.
A ship and airplanes?
Yep. They
What?
were like, we are working women. We are going to help in any way we can. And they had really made this island economy strong enough to be able to ensure their own future as a nation.
I mean, that's outstanding.
Against all the odds, and boy, were there a lot of them. These women carved out a new social structure from the small volcanic island of Jeju. But, times changed. In the 1960s...
Always a but, Caroline.
Okay,
Always
not
a
like a
but.
devastating but. This is not...
Okay, fine.
Yeah, it's not devastating. In the 1960s, the South Korean government pushed Jeju to begin exporting mandarin oranges. I guess they grow really well there.
So random.
Random, but also my son's favorite fruit, so thank you. This job required far less physically and emotionally than the whole diving thing. The pay was also much more consistent. Within a few years, a majority of rural workers were employed in the fruit farms, and by 1978, the beautiful beaches and island life helped tourism surpass agriculture as Jeju's largest industry.
Are you saying that I need to add Jeju to my list of vacation destinations?
Yeah, it's really just a hop, skip, and a jump for you because you're in Japan.
That's true.
I highly recommend it. Opportunities changed too. During the Japanese occupation, Korea established a modern system of national education, based largely on the Japanese system, but with many restrictions. And then, under the United States Army military government in Korea, USAMGIK.
What a mouthful.
What a mouthful, which was from 1945 to 1948, and absolutely an episode for another day. So write that down, Watson. A new system was installed, and it attempted to make education more equally available to all. And these new education opportunities gave women new and expanding horizons, which only furthered the Haenyeo numbers decline. But while their numbers may have fallen drastically, their influence remains great. Today, tourism is still the #1 economic industry of Jeju, in large part due to the diver's reputation and history. In support, the South Korean government now subsidizes all the divers' gear and grants them exclusive rights to sell fresh seafood on the island. Before we head out, Erica, I have some numbers for thought.
Ooh.
Can you help us out?
I can help a girl out. In 1965, 23,081 working Haenyeos are on record. By 1970, that number was down to 14,143. Wow.
Yeah.
In 71, a third of the Haenyeo were under 30. And in 2014, 98% were now over 50. 89-year-old Kwon Young-hee is the oldest working Haenyeo. I mean, oh my.
That we know of.
Yeah, that we know of, but almost 90. Oh my gosh.
89. Both of my grandmothers passed during the pandemic, but they were in their early 90s. And let me just say, no way in hell were these women gonna be doing this.
Yeah, exactly. But in any case, to show while it may be down, the job is not out. The youngest current Haenyeo is 42.
Yes, and I want to take just a second to talk about Kim Jae-yeon. 10 years ago, at age 32, she left her job in finance to heed the call of the sea. She spoke of her sadness at life on land, and her aunts, who were Haenyeo themselves, brought her along on a dive. And that was it. A mother of two, she and her husband are like many modern families today. 2 working parents who share the responsibilities and joys of children.
She's literally straddling 2 worlds, the sea and the land, traditional and the modern. Oh, I love it.
I love it too, but I do think she is obviously a minority and definitely one of the few. It isn't a profession most women are choosing. It's still incredibly dangerous and physically demanding. However, if you ask her, she claims to, quote, have it easy in comparison to her mother's generation. I think in reference to the clothing, the goggles,
the everything,
the financial security, the government assistance.
The everything.
The everything. I bet they have, like, motorboats. I mean, it must be much better.
I bet she doesn't have to give birth out in the water and go in the next week.
That's true. I'm sure she's given at least 2 weeks of maternity leave.
And my God, doesn't she deserve it? Well, I hate to end our discussion on these glass-breaking, earth-shattering women, but I think we can be assured that, unlike this podcast episode, they're nowhere near finished.
I certainly hope so. I want to leave our listeners with a quote from Lisa C's novel, The Island of the Sea Women, which, by the way, if you like historical fictions, I cannot recommend this enough, but please know that you must have an entire box of Kleenex with you if you are a crier. It is emotional and draining in a very positive but profound way.
And I am definitely a crier.
Same. Quote, "Every woman who enters the sea carries a coffin on her back. In this world, in the undersea world, we tow the burdens of a hard life. We are crossing between life and death every day." And with that, I'm Caroline.
And I'm Erica. And we are Pithily Yours.
This episode is brought to you by the Pithy Chronicle, LLC. The Pithy Chronicle is intended for education, entertainment, and non-commercial purposes. Any views or opinions expressed in this podcast are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations that the owner may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. While we offer lots of sarcasm, this podcast does not offer any advice or services. Listening to this podcast may induce fits of laughter, unexpected distraction, or uncontrollable rage at the subjects, hopefully not at us. We hope you learned something today. If not, so sorry. Please be advised we are not experts in the following fields: medical, legal, financial, technological, thermonuclear engineering, submarine warfare, neuroscience, or cat husbandry. Thanks for listening to our little disclaimer. Just covering our history-loving asses. Bye!